Welcome to Contractor Cuts, where we cover the good, the bad, and the ugly of growing a successful contracting company.
Welcome to Contractor Cuts. My name is Clark Turner.
I'm James McConnell.
Thanks for joining us.
All day.
All right, so the last week, or the last podcast that we did, was about the 6 different steps. The 6 different steps of growing a successful contracting company. Kind of the baseline stuff that you need to look out for, that if you have these 6 things, you are going to be working towards success. With that being said, one of the items that we had on there was money management, financial management, knowing finances in and out, having systems and processes, job site and in-house. Today, we're going to dive deeper into that topic. This is going to be nothing but how to manage your money, how to manage job site money, client money, specifically to jobs, and then separate, which guys don't think about, how to manage money within the company. Most people see that all as one pot, but today we're diving into the 2 separate delineations of how we view each one, and kind of viewed separately. So let's start with job site, James. So what is, in your opinion, the biggest leaky bucket running a job when you're looking at a project manager that's new or inefficient? Where do you think the biggest leaky bucket is of losing cash on a job site? Sorry to put you on the spot.
I think it probably something like materials and delivery.
Yeah.
And not necessarily like a straight line. Here's the loss cost. It's like opportunity cost, hidden cost, your gas, the time, the waste, stuff that's not being returned, that's being thrown out.
I got you.
Because what I notice is, if I'm in the background and I'm looking through QuickBooks and I'm going through, Home Depot, Lowe's, and looking at receipts and stuff, I see, multiple trips to Home Depot in a week for the same job. It's like, man, I wish there was like an easy way to just have order everything and deliver it to the site. We could do that. But there's always these trips, and those trips when you have a bunch of trips in the same week, you tend to see these just random purchases, and like that's when tools get thrown in, and that's when I'll get a Snicker bar, I'll get a Coke, and like that stuff is not a big deal, but at the end of the year, it really starts to add up. I've spent $3,000 on Snicker bars.
I remember we once looked at, I don't know if I think it was Jared and I, we looked at how much we spent on the Home Depot buckets. It was like $5,000 one year when we were going through our Home Depot account, just on guys using it as a shopping cart and then taking it with them.
And I get it, because when I go to Home Depot, guess what I do?
You grab a bucket.
I grab a Home Depot bucket because you can use them for everything.
Yeah. So what's funny, and we haven't prepped for this part of the podcast.
Yeah, swear to God.
Which is great, because what I heard you say is an embarrassment of riches. You have so many things systemized and running well that is kind of further down the road of losses of money, which is great. Now you're working on that, fixing that. I think with what you're saying though, and we'll stay on it for a second, I think one of the biggest issues with it too is when we don't help our crews learn how to manage materials, buy materials, pick it up on your way in. We often have project managers that end up picking up that slack. And so a project manager that I'm spending way more money on than what a materials runner should be paid is now spending 2, 3, 5 trips a week running back and forth to Home Depot. Mm-hmm. So someone's getting paid really good money being a PM here, and then all of a sudden they're doing minimum wage work for 5 to 7 hours a week. And so I think that's what you're saying too, is like there's not a measurable on, well, my PM drove to 3 different job sites and hit Home Depot 3 separate times that day. Mm-hmm. That was a lost day, but he didn't have anything else to do, so it's not a big deal. Well, he should have something. He should be getting organized. He should be filling up on estimates. He should be visiting new job sites or new estimate job sites, right? There's a lot of that kind of ghost loss that you don't see, but affects the bottom line at the end.
And that's something as a nation we need to look at, is ghost loss. There haven't been new ghosts. I don't know if you've noticed that.
That's true. Like I've never heard about a haunting of someone from like 2008 like that died. Like it's always like in the 1920s.
Yeah, like some kid in the corner playing Pokemon.
Yeah, like there's not a Pokemon ghost like looking for Pokemon.
Yeah.
All right, next week we'll cover this for sure.
Good.
That being said, I think it's great that that's what you think is your biggest loss, because there's so much loss before that happens that I think you've really tightened up. Because I think when I go back to the front end of where I see with guys I'm coaching that coming through here, their biggest loss starts out at the estimate of client engagement and estimate mixed together. So the client engagement of what you're in charge of and what I'm in charge of and what I'm agreeing to do and what you're agreeing to do, combined with an estimate that doesn't have the detail, that doesn't have the scope right, that doesn't have really a definition around what the dollars are for. Those two things combined, a poorly written estimate combined with no client engagement agreement, I think is the biggest loss that I see with guys. Again, you have a very tight client engagement agreement. You pitch it really well. You do it with every single client, and your estimates are probably too detailed. Like you're overpaid, I think, for the amount of time you spend on estimates. Yeah. No, but you're like you said in the last podcast, I think it was something about like you spent an hour on an estimate that you just duplicated from another one that was very similar. Mm-hmm. Most guys will spend 10 minutes and be fine. You get high detail on that because A, it impresses, it sells, and also
that's where the money is.
It CYAs you to where you're not having that leaky bucket. I think that to me is if I can solve someone's first problem, which your past is solving those two things, the CEA and writing a good estimate.
You know, one good exercise that I would do when you're doing an estimate is, and you don't have to commit to it, but think through what else can I charge for?
Yeah.
What can I charge for?
Yep.
What else can I charge for? And like you think you're done, you're like, what else could I charge for? How could I reword this? How could I break this out? And then you argue with yourself because you want to get it to a place where you can sell this job.
Yeah.
So you build it to where you're like, this is too much.
I don't think I'm
not going to charge for that.
80,000.
So you start backing off of it and arguing with yourself about what is reasonable to charge for, what is not. And if you spend the time doing that, you'll create, like in your mind, you'll have your way that you kind of think through an estimate so you don't miss the random things.
Well, and I think that's the beauty of job templating, to where you have in ProShock 360 a pre-built job, and you can pre-build a bunch of different ones. So it's like kitchen renovation, bathroom, basement, addition, new construction, flooring, whatever it is. It's pre-built with. I've got the dumpster on there. I've got the porta potty on there. I've got the cleaning. I got the landscaping, just to make sure I don't miss it.
Yeah, and obviously there's an infinite number of things that you can pre-build. Like you could change one word and it be a different thing. But we all know in the industry, there's things that are typical of guys missing. There's things typical that clients will misunderstand or misread. Yep. So like, for instance, if we're doing a patio that has a roof over top, that does not necessitate a roof or a ceiling under that roof. Mm-hmm. You could have it completely exposed. There's no code for that.
Yep.
However, that's an easy thing to leave off.
Yeah. And
that's an easy thing for a client to say, well, I assumed that would be part of it. And that's where you end up in this gray area where you're like, well, I don't want to.
At best, you're doing it at cost.
At best, you're doing it at cost.
Right. At worst, you're eating it, but you're not going to make money no matter what on that item usually.
And so say I don't know if they want to do that. I don't want to necessarily add another $5,000 to my estimate. I'm going to put in the notes of that line item. Does not include any ceiling. This is open rafters. Let's talk about that when we review this estimate.
New PMs I always train on, this includes, this does not include. Right, I want those things on every line item for now. And once you get better, you can take those off. But then also like a $0 line item that says, hey, if you want this, it's going to be $5,000. That way they don't see the sticker shock at the bottom of, well, that's way too much. I can't afford that. But they've got a quote in there to do it. Well, if you also want a roof, not just go straight up to the rafters, it's going to be $5,000 extra or whatever it is, right? And so I think that's that's with the estimate writing side a good thing. One thing that I have guys struggle with, and I struggle with coaching guys on, that maybe you could give some insight on. How much time do you spend on an estimate, right? And I think not to answer it yet, but to extend the question, we coach on desk estimate, site revision, final revisions at minimum 3 estimates. There's probably on larger jobs, there's 4 to 5 mixed in. That being said, when do you spend 3 hours on a desk estimate, and when do you spend 1 hour on a site estimate on 2 jobs that are exactly the same? Like, how do you differentiate the time spend that you're going to put into the detail? Because I can spend 8 hours on a kitchen estimate to get all the details in there and then lose it, right? I can also spend 10 minutes on a kitchen estimate and win it and then be screwed financially if I didn't put what I needed to put in there. So what determines in your brain when you're assessing, and I think there's an art to it of assessing the reality of the client converting, assessing the financial abilities of the customer and how they're, the cues that you pick up on. But is there anything that you could tie a string to? Well, I spend more time when this happens. I spend less time when this happens. But I think at the end of the day, not to go to the end of the conversation, but at the end of the day, we need to spend that time before it converts no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you start deciding when to give free time out before we get to that spot?
If I haven't communicated with the client other than an email, they're going to get the least of my time.
Yeah.
Unless they sent me like a set of drawings and like this really detailed, like it really is an art, because if somebody sends me a well thought through email that I can tell is not ChatGPT generated, and if you work with ChatGPT, it's a lot easier to
drawings,
see.
define scope, timeline. Hey, we're looking to get started around June 15th.
Yeah. Especially if they give you a budget. Like some people will surprise you, like this is the budget we want to be in.
Yeah.
I'll say, when do you need this for me to be considered for this project? Because I'd like to spend some time with it.
Yeah.
And I'll spend hours.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's that legitimate and I look at the bottom line price and I say, I think we can do that, I will spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. But I don't start from square one and go down. I'll do my own preliminary estimate for myself. I'll just write out, this is the general process, and I'll fill in some of the big chunks, and then I'll start looking through those and editing those. But I'm the whole time I'm like, okay, here's a number. It's going to be higher than that.
Yeah.
We're still below that. Let me start filling this in. I'm going to start with the cabinets because that's where a lot of the money is. I'm going to go to the MEPs because that's where a lot of the money is. And I'll find the areas where I would, if it were me, this is where I would save money and not pursue this. But when you're given very little to start with, there's really not a whole lot to talk about unless you need a conversation.
Yeah.
You need to have a conversation, and from that conversation, I'm determining how viable is this client. It's our pre-qualification. If I'm asking them questions and they're really reluctant to give me information, they really don't want to talk about the budget, but they also don't want to give me any details onto like what they really want. And they're like, we're still kind of up in the air. It's like, you guys need a designer.
Yeah.
Happy to help you with that. But like, for instance, the lady, she's got a kitchen renovation she wants to do, but we had a conversation on the phone. She's like, I really don't know what to do with this. This kitchen's a weird shape. And great. What's your timeline? 6 months to a year. Okay, not a problem. We can slow roll that one.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're at yet. I don't know how reasonable a client you are yet, but I've got enough time, in a 2-week span to put together something pretty considerable for you. But we're going to start off by figuring out what would we do for a layout.
Yeah.
How would we mess with this? And she might need a designer at some point, but I think it's a little premature to bring that person in.
Yeah.
And if she's going to be paying any money up front, I'd rather it be with me. How can I get engaged initially to be your partner in this, and maybe we bring in the designer. You work with them
Pay
separately.
me $2,000 and I'm going to help you design this and lay it out from my side. And then we'll bring a designer in as needed.
Yeah.
But let's spend some time kind of refining and fitting in your price point to your scope and trying to make it all match up.
Yeah.
I think two things that you do well, if I can compliment you. One, with what you just said, that conversation, the rhetoric of how you say it. Saying what you want to say so they hear it the right way is so important and you're great at. So it's not until I get a scope, how am I supposed to price this out? Like, why don't you get a designer? Why don't you get that? Once you get me that stuff, I can get you some numbers.
Yeah.
Versus instead of them being your problem, instead it's like, we got to solve this together as our problem. Right? Like, hey, so first what we need is like this, and I can't even get numbers around this. So if you can help me get this, and this, I think we can start wrapping numbers. It's saying the exact same thing, but it's our problem that we're solving as opposed to you are my problem. And until you get me the stuff, I can't get you numbers.
Yeah, I could throw numbers at the wall all day, but really, when it comes down to it, you need to do something
You're wasting
for
my time.
me.
Yeah. I think the second thing you do really well is on those write-ups, the dialing up and down of time that you spend. I think you spend a little too much time on some of them, but that's okay because that's the sales side. But I think the dialing of time up and down, you still prep yourself for the next revision. So you're putting line items in the description that you need to answer next time, right? You're writing it up of this is open, but we need to solve this problem. Mm-hmm. So when you sit down in 3 weeks after the homeowner gets you some information, you can then sit down with your estimate, refresh your brain and be like, oh yeah, that's where I got to pick up this line. Yeah. This is where the cabinets, I know that they said they don't want shaker, but they want blah, 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 blah. I can then, okay, that's where we're at. I'm going to pick it up to where you're not having to spend an hour catching up to where you left off 3 weeks ago. I think that's a important hidden kind of skill in and of itself.
I'll tell you why, number one, you're wrong about spending too much time because, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, I'm looking for twofers.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing an estimate for this person and I spend 2 hours on it and it's like a kitchen renovation, that's because I'm generating new line items for, okay, you didn't want shaker. They wanted the flat panel, whatever. And that's a trend that's happening. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to I have a line item that's been in here forever that is the standard shaker, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to create a new line item. I'm going to detail it out differently for these flat panel, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I spent too much time on this one $50,000 estimate to come up with this line item, but now I have a line item that's going to save me all the time in the future.
You're saying like a pre-built.
I'm pre-building
in the software. You just save the item with the detail, with the numbers. We might have done some research on cost.
I might have spoken with my vendor. I might have sent him a drawing and said, it's something like this. Give me an idea of cost for something like this.
And then 6 weeks from now, someone wants the same estimate, and it takes you 30 seconds to build that cabinet.
Or just
line
something
item.
Similar that I can augment that to fit what it is. And so whenever I'm spending that time, I really don't like to think of it as like, how much time am I giving this person?
Yeah.
I'm like, how valuable is this estimate to me? How can I use this and break it apart in its components?
Even if they say no, I'm still building value in the company.
It's a win. I'm working on the processes while I'm serving their
And
needs.
a PM can come in and price out an estimate with your numbers and verbiage that you've already written out, where you're not now having to answer questions anymore. So that's
time
great.
wasted, baby.
I like it. So that being said, estimate, CEA, getting the client engagement agreement, getting all that stuff done, we land the job. I think part of that and why deepening the loss of money and how that happens is when I have broad line items and a single line item that 3 different or even 2 different companies are handling is not good.
It's a mistake.
Because the way we've built the software is one line item is for one person and might have 7 line items for one person. That's okay. I can have 7 line items in time to one work order and they combine into one price. But I'm never going to have 2 crews working on one line item because I can only pay one person per line item. And we set that up intentionally because I need to tie every dollar that I'm spending to every dollar that I'm invoicing. And so if I'm paying that guy $1,000 and that guy $800, I can't just say, $1,800 on this line item because then if that guy doesn't show up and that guy does and now I got to switch money around or I've got to hire someone else that's more expensive, all that goes sideways. And so identifying every single dollar that I'm invoicing is detailed out to what I'm spending, number one, on labor. Number two, same with materials. I'm going to have material line items. I'm going to have what you've done really well on the material side is we're going to do allowances and line items. This, we've got $1,000 allowance for a vanity. Great. And so if the customer goes and picks one out and it's $1,200, great. You're going to pay the extra. That's fine. But I'm not going to just say, hey, install vanity. This includes the vanity cost. And they pick out one and I was expecting to spend less and now I'm spending more because I wasn't organized with it, right?
Yeah.
Also building in one thing that one of our PMs did a ton, it was he would have tile surround. And pre-built in that line item, SKU 87645 from Home Depot, that's the backer board. That's the red guard. And all of that's already pre-priced and pre-spelled out by SKU in the line item. So if I'm doing a tile surround, I click tile surround, this many square feet, all the numbers are done, all my materials are budgeted for, and my pre-negotiated price with my tile installer is there. That way, all I have to do is put that in. I know exactly how much it's going to cost me, and I know exactly how much I'm going to charge. So I'm giving my best price the first time, every single time, because I can't do it for any money less, and I can make great money to make my profit on this price point, right? So the organization of the estimates, the price points, and all that stuff, I think is the basis for the biggest hole, sealing up the biggest hole in your financial bucket. Because that allows you, knowing where your dollars are going, allows you to do job costing. And job costing is something that is very simple, but it takes some time to do, and it takes organization to understand it. What I want to do with job costing is understand labor, how much I paid, how much I budgeted, and materials. What did I spend? What did I budget? How much did it cost? How much did I invoice for? And understanding all of my numbers. Like I always say, it's a math game. This isn't a gamble. This isn't a guess. This is all math. And so if I'm putting in the equations correctly, I'm making the exact amount of money I need to be making to grow this company. That being said, when we do job costing now, on the job site, I want to be looking at two things and kind of getting in the weeds. ProStruct 360, the software, I send out work orders. I say, hey, that's done, that's done, that's done. And that creates a payment for my crew. And then I can print a check or do a direct, however you want to pay them. And that's processed. And that all pushes to QuickBooks. It's tied in QuickBooks to the crew, to the job. I can see all of the reporting in QuickBooks, but also I've got all the reporting in ProStruct as well. All I got to do is do it in ProStruct and it keeps your QuickBooks updated. Going backwards though, materials is what you do on a weekly basis for our different locations is tying the purchases to the jobs. That's the only thing you got to do in QuickBooks is taking your bank account and your credit cards and making sure that you were categorizing every dollar that we spend. Every swipe of the credit card is categorized weekly.
What the heck was that?
We just heard a big butt in here.
Did you?
Yeah, it's fine. We'll keep going. Anyways, when
What the heck was that?
we need answers. No, what you want to do, you download this. QuickBooks captures your whole credit card and tries to tie it to stuff for you. So all you have to do is pull up your Home Depot account or your Lowe's account or your 84 Lumber, whatever it is. Say, okay, that purchase was for 123 Main Street. As soon as you say that in QuickBooks, it sucks right back into the software and tells you on the job card exactly how much you've spent in materials and how much you have in overages if you've gone over your budget.
Yeah.
That is what we're talking about of job costing and money management on job sites, right? What else are you doing to keep an eye on spending, budgeting, all that stuff, job site wise, to make sure what I budgeted is what I spent, and if I got to spend more, I charge more and I can justify it to the customer. How do you deal with all of that side of it?
Well, that's a pretty broad question.
Yeah.
One small thing that I do is when I'm putting materials onto a job, I always put in the memo kind of like, not for like the $25 purchase, maybe, just depends on how froggy I'm feeling, but bigger purchases, $1,000, $1,500, $7,000, I'm putting a memo in there kind of what it's for. So when I pull up the materials in ProStruct, I can see what's been purchased, because it's not, when guys make purchases,
Yeah.
if you have it broken out into labor and material, it's not always easy to know when that's been purchased. We try to set it up to where, hey, once you make that purchase, this is just a material line item. Assign yourself to it, and when you've made the purchase, complete it.
Yeah.
That way I know it's been completed.
The level of detail that you're putting per purchase is going to help you manage it in the future. So because if QuickBooks says you bought $1,000 at Home Depot for 123 Main Street, that's what comes into the ProStruct, right?
Yeah.
But if you say in the description, this was for sheetrock, when it comes across in ProStruct, it says Home Depot sheetrock $1,000 on this date. Mm-hmm. And so you can look at that and say, okay, we've already bought that. We've already bought that.
Yeah.
Oh, crap. We've got like $800 left, and I haven't even bought the paint or the flooring.
Yeah.
Right?
And then it's like, 3 weeks later, another $1,000 for sheetrock.
Yep.
You're like, hey, we've already gone over our budget for sheetrock. This one is another $1,000 for sheetrock. What's going on? Oh, that was not for that job. That the guy did it wrong.
Yeah.
It's for this job.
Yeah.
Great. I wouldn't have known that unless, it wouldn't have been an immediate flag for me unless I'd kept a little bit of a record of that inside of QuickBooks, ProStruct, whatever the case.
Yeah. Well, I think a great example of that is like that allows you to catch change orders on the fly. If you get to the end of the job 3 months later, you can't be like, hey, we also bought an extra. Like I remember a job where we painted a room. We're doing like a kitchen, and the side room, we kind of scuffed up the walls, but we could have probably fixed it. And the homeowner was like, will you guys repaint it and just repaint that room? And and so we did it, and our PM on site was like, if you buy the materials, we'll cover the labor since we scuffed up some of these walls. Homeowner was like, great, fine, right? And so I saw a purchase at Sherwin-Williams like 3 weeks after we bought all the paint. And so I was able to look at it.
Sherman-Williams.
Sherman-Williams? Interesting. But I was able to look at it and say, hey, why is there an extra, $85, whatever it was in the lot, purchase? Like, do we mess something up? Yeah, this is what happened. Okay, so we need to do a change order for that. Oh, yeah, I never updated the estimate. So we caught, it's $100, it's not a big deal, but that's how you catch those change orders, especially when you're managing employees. And if you're not doing it as a one-man show, you can't hire and continue, right? We got to build the company that we want to use in the future now. So when we do hire people in, it's operated as a successful company. Yeah. So I think that's great, is that money management. So we want to do job costing. We want to know exactly what we're spending where. That's on the outside. The other part of that is purchasing materials. We went a little bit into this last week as well, where we try and do the front end purchase for the job site. I like to walk the job site with my crew, identify what needs to be purchased, get an order put in. Maybe I've got lumber coming from one place and paint coming from another place, and all my main materials from Home Depot, whatever it is. And I'm going to line up those deliveries or guys that go pick them up. And I'm going to help out my crews with that. Once we do that initial purchase, unless it's a large job, I'm putting it on my crews to do all the small buys. All right, I got to go and buy two tubes of caulk. I got to go get this. I got to go get that. Great, that's on you. But I'm going to do a phone sale, and I train the crews on how to do it one time a day, so they're not going 7 times a day. Where it's like, okay, what I want you to do when you get here in the morning. Walk around. Do not leave to go to Home Depot until you take a full assessment of what's going to be done today and tomorrow, and try to buy everything for what you were doing. They go to Home Depot or Lowe's, they make the purchase, and they do a phone sale with me or with my project manager. My project manager has a set of questions. Did they buy tools, food, drinks? No. What job? Can you tell me the job name? Because if Home Depot or Lowe's puts the job name in the job description, it's then going to be on my online account. And so I can match up the materials real quick and easy, right? So what's the job name? What's the crew that's standing there? I want to know their name. So we go through this whole list of questions to verify. So the crew is standing there in front of the Home Depot guy saying, oh crap, they ask these every time. I can't get by. I can't throw that extra tape measure in that I want to buy for myself. I can't. So they're hearing that, and we're not losing money on the purchase. But I'm also not driving out to the job site, then to Home Depot, then back to the job site to deliver the materials, and then back to my office. Instead, they just hit it on the way in to the job, made a phone sale, and it cost me 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so identifying and managing the purchasing side and controlling it is where that leaky bucket is also stopped. And that's kind of some of the material costs that you were talking about earlier. but making sure that we're doing the phone sales properly. We've got a systematic way to do that, and that the crews understand and know their responsibility for versus what I'm going to do for them. I think 90% of guys coming into coaching are the errand boys for their crews. They go and run materials. They go and I'm going to go buy everything. Just tell me what you need. And they go to every single job site once every day or every other day to deliver materials and walk it. And your time is way more valuable. I'd rather pay the crew an extra $500 to do all those purchases than for me to spend all that time running back and forth. I don't have that time.
Yeah.
You're never going to grow your company that way. So understanding purchases and putting it on the crews for the majority of those small purchases, but also making sure that they can't take advantage and that I'm protecting my money in those purchases. So that's job site. We can probably talk another hour about that. Let's switch to like company, cash flow, cash management, keeping your books tight. First and foremost, my main rule, accounts receivable and loans. I never want you to take a loan more than your accounts receivable. If you have a line of credit or a loan, this is a spot that will take your company down. If you've got a line of credit, I'm only going to pay off outstanding accounts receivable, outstanding invoices that are owed to me, and pay that out of my line of credit. So when the customer pays, it goes straight back on the line of credit. This is a good way, like a VA loan or some sort of loan that's coming a 30, 60, 90-day pay. Maybe you're a sub for a large commercial GC that has 90-day net terms. That's fine. Use your line of credit for that. I invoiced $30,000. I'm going to pay that invoice, quote unquote, from that line of credit. As soon as that GC pays me in 90 days, that $30,000, it goes straight back on the line of credit. I don't even realize that money's there. That's the only way I want you managing loans first and foremost. All right, going into cash flow management though. How are you looking at managing project managers? How are you managing cash flow on a weekly basis? And I know it's kind of a broad question, and we could probably talk a couple hours about this alone. But when you're looking at jobs, 30,000 foot view, when you're meeting with a project manager looking at his 7 jobs that he's running, how are you making sure that we're collecting enough and we are paying the people that need to get paid and all the bills are paid, and that we're ending up with dollars in the bank account at the end of the day?
That's an easy one for me.
Okay.
Because we invoice clients a week ahead of time.
Yep.
For the work that's about to take place. So the money that we receive that week is going to be paid out to the crews the following
over the next
week,
7 days. Yeah.
And the leftover is the gross profit.
Yep.
And then because I did that initially, it's tight. It's tight. When you start operating that way and you don't have a loan, and just money in the background, it is money in, money out.
Yeah.
You are having to be very fastidious with your bookkeeping.
Yep.
Once you've done that for a little bit, there's a little bit of wiggle room where you can start to hurt yourself again. Yeah. And so you do need to keep that tethered where, okay, we got $60,000 that kind of stays in the bank. That's great. That's essentially profit that we just have there sitting
Yep.
as our operating capital.
Yeah.
So when we take on a job like a VA job or any type of loan that is going to hold retainage or not pay up front, they're all different. So it's hard to kind of nail it down. But a VA is a good example because the way they have that set up is essentially you're not taking any profit until the very end of the project because they don't give you any money up front. And there's a 20% retainage on every invoice that they do pay you. And that can be a stressful way to run it, except for at the very end of the project, you're receiving a lump sum of cash that is essentially all profit.
Yeah.
So the way that I look at it is if we've got $60,000 in the bank, that is our kind of operating, rotating money, then I can run a project that's maybe a 2-3 month project under those terms. Anything outside of that, if I've got like a $200,000 job that I need to run, then I need to look at a different financing option because I don't have $100,000 sitting in the background. I only have 60. So I'm going to run out of money unless I've got 3 other jobs operating at the same time.
Yeah.
So knowing what jobs you're able to take is an important part of, job costing.
Yep.
How long of a runway do we have until the payments are going to come due?
Yeah.
And even if you've got that money sitting there, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel like you've got that money sitting there. It's like, I got to cut checks. I got to pay bills. I got to pay the credit card down. I got to pay my subscriptions. This is going to be a really stressful 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, that's never fun. So I think there are ways to prepare yourself against that. And I'm not a fan of loans, but if I was going to take a loan, it would be to service projects like that, where the money is spoken for. It's a government entity. I know that they've got it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get screwed on the back end of this. I just need to make it to the back end of this.
I know I got a 10% payment of $40K coming in at the end of this job, so I can take out of the loan up to $40K, because as soon as that comes in, that goes back. But what often happens, what I see with guys, is that $40K comes in and we'll put 20 back on the line, but I got to pay this and I got to pay that. And so it's easier to steal from that profit that you should put back than to steal from the loan for some reason, right? I pull the money out of the loan because I'm going to pay it back. And then when it's time to pay it back, it's like, well, it's my money.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't do it. I think a great example of what you're saying too is our Lexington branch. We're doing a new construction. Long story on it of it's a takeover from another company. We're doing it. It's a full new construction. We're doing it cost plus, and I think it's like we're going to end up making about 14 to 15% on it at the most, and that's going to be covering most of our expenses and costs and overhead. Like it's not a profitable job, but we want to be in the area. We want to impress these clients. We want the clients have siblings that are going to build on the same plot of land, so we want to get future work with them. So we might end up making 12 to 13% on this job, and we made the decision to say yes to it because of what it's going to mean for the company. But our game plan on that job is every dollar that the bank retains 10%. So the bank is going to owe us a lot of money before we finish. And so the way we're running that job is we are going to do that at cost from now until the end of the job. And I need 2 to 3 other smaller jobs running at the same time that are going to pay our paychecks and bills. So we might have a small amount of money covering overhead like gas and insurance, but we're not paying our employees out of that big new build. Instead, we're going to have all these other jobs that fund it. And then at the end of the job, we'll get a 6-figure check for the 10% retainage. And boom, that's straight profit.
Yeah. Now we're in business.
Yeah, and so it's the understanding, and then also keying. We just got to draw for $68,000 for this job. I need to not touch that and put that maybe even in a side account and make sure when it's time to pay the concrete guys that $68K is there, because they're going to need all of it. Mm-hmm. So I can't take that into my account, spend it on this, pay my truck, make sure that these guys are happy. And now the concrete's due for this new construction, and I don't have that $68K. It's down to 20. So where am I coming up with the other 48? Well, I got to invoice somebody, right? And you get in this cycle of mismanaging that money because, well, I will pay. It's the sun's going to shine tomorrow, so I'll get it then. Instead, what we need to do is have it identified separately. I love separate bank accounts. Get 12 bank accounts if your bank will let you set it up, and put that money in that account and only pull it out when invoices come that you're paying. Because for us, if I can do that and live off these other jobs and just maintain that job, we got a big paycheck at the end of the job that will then launch us into the next one.
Yeah,
right?
And then you could buy fleet vehicles. You could immediately buy your own truck. Like you've got $100,000.
I think we need like all new trucks for everybody. Get them on like lifts, giant wheels. Oh, yeah. Some like lighting underneath it. It'll be really cool.
Dude. And maybe like a bubblegum machine in your car.
Dude, have you ever seen Exhibit?
You talking about Pimp My Ride?
I'm talking about Pimp My Ride.
I love that
We're
shit.
going on Pimp My Ride. All right. Last thing that I have on the money management is I view this differently than most people. I'm trying to always cut overhead. Not most people. Most guys that are in this that are struggling, they view, hey, our profits grew. Now I can spend more. I love looking at overhead and saying, okay, we don't need that. I don't need that. I don't need that. My wife calls me cheap, but I'm like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's get rid of that. Like I remember we used to have fleet vehicles for the company, and we're like, hey, insurance. We got sued because one of our guys ran into someone, and like, let's just get rid of it. Pay the guys a little extra. Let them have their own vehicles. Have some let's save that cash. And so we saved it. We put some magnets on cars. honestly, we got more calls off our fleet vehicles of complaining about driving and ruining our reputation than we did calls off people looking for work.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that was us. That was our market. I'm not saying don't do fleet vehicles if that fits what you're doing. For a general contracting company doing residential general contracting, I don't love it outside of your own vehicle running through the company. That's my opinion. That's not fact. That's not the way you got to go. But stuff like that to where it's like, where can I spend less? I know we're making more money this year. Can I spend less this year? Because every dollar I don't spend is a dollar in my bank, and every dollar in my bank is a job I can say yes to so I can fund it through that money. So that's part of it. Job costing, managing your money, and again, we didn't go too deep into that, but really making sure that every you have a time block every week to look at QuickBooks, to look at the money coming in, the money going out, and making sure that we aren't overspending or spending money that's not ours to spend. That is something that guys back burner and end up not doing until the end of the month or the 3 months in because it's not on fire. The customer's calling, I got to run out to the job, I got a new estimate, I got to go do that. And they don't spend time organizing their finances. And that is where they're going to get in trouble.
I just had a great idea for you. It's the ABCs of overhead.
I love it.
Always be cutting.
It's great. TM. Yes, I got it.
Shoot.
Got it before you.
Well, no, I did it. I gave it for you. So
I TM'd it, so it's mine now.
I know, but I intended for you to take it.
But I'm going to sell it. I'm going to put on shirts. It's going to be awesome. You're going to be so jealous.
All
right. Thank you for listening. If you want to have a conversation about managing your money in your company, go to ProStroke360.com. Go to the Contact Us. There should be a link on there that you can set up a 30-minute phone call with me. I'd love to talk with you about your company, what you're doing. See if we're even a good fit for you. We don't have to work together. If you need some advice, give me a call. I'd love to help you. Love doing this. So anyways, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.